I call it the flypaper effect.
Flypaper effect.
Yeah. You hang up the flypaper and you get all these flies stuck all over it. I'm sure some fly said, it's got to be safe. Look at all the flies that are there.
Okay. Moving on.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle Carden. Good afternoon, Donna.
Don't point it out. Don't give me a hard time.
I know. We usually do these in the morning, but everything's on fire. We didn't start the fire.
Krista.
I'll blame Krista.
Yeah, we didn't start the fire. Okay.
Yeah, so I said to Donna, I was like, my next job in my next life, I want things that won't catch on fire.
Yeah. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I want a job where there's never urgency. I don't know that exists, but that's what I want.
I don't know. I like it in Key West where you go and they say, well, we'll pick you up to go on the fishing trip tomorrow morning.
Mm-hmm.
That means sometime before 1 p.m. Tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. That means after 11:30, but before happy hour.
Mm-hmm. I know. I just don't know. I don't know if there is a job that has no urgency. But yeah, that would be my goal to find that.
That we're qualified for. But you know what? You're such a type A. You wouldn't be able to handle it.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know. I
am.
Maybe I'll just become a hacker. They have no urgency.
They do on TV.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I couldn't wear the hoodies all the time. Alrighty, so let's get into it today. HIPAA boot camp. Any thing to announce there? Pretty much doors are closed. Maybe.
Yeah.
Taking.
Yeah, it's. I let somebody in this week, but.
Ooh. See there.
There's somebody else that I told them. You got to get back to me. But, I'm just, people need it.
Oh, I know. So if you want to know more about that, go to thehipaabootcamp.com. You can apply and register there. Again, still waiting on the person to pay double so I can kick somebody out for you.
Hey, there you go.
Anyway, thanks for listening to today's show. Please sure to share it out to your favorite peoples online. And just share to people you don't like. I mean, most of us have more people we don't like than we do, so share it with those as well.
So you gotta listen to this; you'll love it.
Yeah. So, speaking of the whole people online that you don't like, we did see something online this week in the HIPAA
Say what
segment here. Guy comes out with, I thought, a very brilliant and funny chart.
Mm-hmm.
A graphic, it's a graphic chart. And it gives the difference between HIPAA versus HIPAA. I don't know what's more funny, the fact that, what he has in the chart, or that there are some people saying that you don't understand HIPAA. This doesn't apply. I'm like, dude, it's a joke. Did you not read the whole thing? Oh, goodness.
Yeah. But there are some great comments from the people that do get it about, But what do you think? We go through what, I guess, line by line, because he's got two columns. And he's got HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And the other column is HIPAA, Health Information Privacy Protection Act.
Yeah, which, honestly, I was like, sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a doable thing.
So on his list of things that apply under the HIPAA column, it protects health coverage for people who change jobs, which a lot of people don't realize that's where that came from. We teach that in the boot camp. Requires medical providers to give patients access to their personal health information. Yes, it does. It requires medical providers to protect the privacy of health information. Indeed, it does. And it was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Bill Clinton in 1996. It is a real law.
Whereas HIPAA was invented by people on the internet during the COVID-19 pandemic, which frankly, I think it was invented before that, but it got a lot more notice during the pandemic for sure.
Yes. HIPAA is indeed invented.
Yes, but we should point out we just covered what HIPAA covers, but let's point out what HIPAA actually covers. So HIPAA actually prohibits stores and restaurants from asking for proof of vaccination. HIPAA also prohibits stores and restaurants from requiring you to wear a mask. And then lastly, HIPAA prohibits anyone from asking you for any health information for any reason.
Oh, and it does require medical providers to protect the privacy of health information.
Yes, they both require that. So even the made-up version of HIPAA requires medical providers to protect the health information.
And the most important thing about HIPAA, it's not a law. It doesn't exist.
Hey, look, it's on the internet. It exists. If I saw it on Facebook, it's got to be true. It's funny because I actually created a T-shirt that says, if it's on the internet, it's true. And then you know how you see a quote and then at the bottom kind of right-hand corner is who wrote the quote?
Yeah.
So the bottom right-hand corner says Abraham Lincoln. If it's on the internet, it's true. Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. And as in this, where many people didn't get the joke, I'm going to go with people don't get the Abraham Lincoln part of the joke either.
You would be surprised how many people have read that and they go, seriously? What's on the internet is true? That's what you believe that? I'm like, did you not read who the quote was from? It's the same thing. People read just as much as they want to read, and then they formulate their opinion, which is why just reading headlines or the first paragraph of something is dangerous.
I know. It's like there's things I would love to talk about, but I hadn't had time to read all the details.
Mm-hmm. Which means if you don't know all the details, don't talk about it.
There are so many headlines that if you read all the details, there's so much more to it.
Yeah. All right. So we will put this graphic in the show notes so you can check it out. You might want to even put it somewhere within your place of work.
Yes. Share it with your organization, particularly with the people that want to tell you what HIPAA.
Yeah. If you're one of those stores or restaurants that people say you can't do these things, then post this and you can just point to it. You are correct. This is a HIPAA violation.
Which is not a law.
Yeah. You know what, though? A really great idea for somebody, though, would be to purchase a website that people can file HIPAA complaints.
We should get help me with HIPAA.
We do have that.
Yes, that's right.
Because people can't spell.
I know. I always tell people this is the name of my podcast. You can just search for my name or look for Help Me with HIPAA. And if you can't find it, you're spelling HIPAA wrong.
Yeah. Well, as of today, even if they spell it wrong, they'll still find it.
Hallelujah. But we do have an actual HIPAA thing on HIPAA, say what episode, segment.
Yeah, it's another HIPAA failure, and guess where, of all places on the planet, it could possibly happen?
In the Atlanta area. It involves Stone Mountain.
I want to see somebody do some research on the number of HIPAA problems from all organizations in the country versus those within Georgia. It has to be the leading state for HIPAA violations.
I don't have any anecdotal evidence to the contrary.
Georgia comes up more often than any other state when we're talking.
Yeah.
Which is funny because that's where you live.
Look, I have a good business for where I'm located.
I know. It's
Yes.
like, clean up your own backyard, Donna.
I know. This one, I'm like, when I saw it, I'm like, seriously?
Well, we talk about all the time that you can have violations, you can have HIPAA violations, you can have breaches of medical data, and it not be digital. And we talk about securing paper records. But
Yes.
apparently, in some places of Georgia, you can find medical records on the side of the road.
I mean, they have a picture, and it's literally piles of boxes that are just crushed, and it's like a pile of trash.
Yeah, but
Even has the turned over chair next to it.
So the person from the TV station, Justin Gray, is the reporter. It's not bad enough that the information, the patient records were found dumped along the side of the road, but he went to the location of the self-storage unit where these records were stored at one time before the place forgot to pay the bill or didn't pay the bill or something like that. And guess what he found at the self-storage place? More medical records.
They're still there. So what? Okay. When you put patient information away and lock a door and pay rent on the place, do not stop paying rent, because that's what happened here.
Mm-hmm.
And here you go. You know, I live not far from Stone Mountain Park. The facility, Hope Medical, is in Stone Mountain. These records were like 30 miles away on the south side of town, so I don't understand that at all. And apparently, let's see, several years ago, or a couple of years ago,
Maybe it's their geo-redundant backup.
they had a fire at their office in 2018, and they moved things to this storage facility after a fire in 2018. So here we are in 2021. It's basically like people were like, well, it's in storage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what'll happen to it. I don't know what we're going to do about it. Nobody's apparently checking on it.
It probably got forgotten.
Yeah. And there was an outstanding overdue 3-month balance. 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Overdue. Okay, right away, somebody should have said it prior to the 3 months starting, and certainly in month 1, 2, and apparently in month 3, when the money was finally available for the payment, the storage company informed them that you were a couple of days late on your 3rd month. And you know that show where they bid for the
Storage Wars.
Storage Wars.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what happened. They sold off the units, and I would love to have seen the episode where someone bought an entire storage unit full of medical records.
Mm. Wow.
Can you imagine? So, and guess what? Those people that purchased it had zero responsibility.
They didn't have a BAA?
I know. And the
Not even with
storage facility, not a BAA, because you get your own private lock, and they're responsible for staying out of it, so their job does not require them to access it. So it's on you.
Mm-hmm.
I look forward to hearing how this works out, because we know what happens when it's in the news, don't we?
I'm going to open up a HIPAA compliant storage facility in Georgia. It's obviously a need.
Yeah, you get your payments 2 years up front and then start billing at the end of the first year.
Yep.
So that they got time to pay. But, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen here, but we'll have to pay attention. At some point, we'll be doing an episode. You remember when we talked about this?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. So there's got to be at least one listener going, oh, crap. What happened to those? What happened to those boxes of stuff?
Who pays that bill? We need to make sure their bill's paid in advance. Who's going and checking on it? Who goes and looks?
I've seen stuff like that happen. Personally, we had a client that took over a medical office building. So one medical office moved out, they moved in, completely different specialty, and they found a bunch of medical records. Yep. And, unfortunately, they called the place like, hey, might want to come back and get these.
Glad it was them that caught it.
Yeah, because, they could have thrown them away, or they could have been a different person that got them. I mean, just all kind of issues.
I was so proud. We have a client that called us and they said, our storage facility called and there's been a fire in a unit near ours. And they rushed down there and open up their unit and it's, loaded with water because, they put the fire out. Mm-hmm. That required water. Mm-hmm. But, our team, they called and they said, tell us, this is what we're doing. Help us make sure we're not missing anything. What, X, Y, and Z. And they had an individual there guarding their paper storage, pulled it out and guarded that paper storage, even though it was soaking wet, until they could get a recovery company that signed a BAA to come and help deal with the soggy paper. But they guarded that facility to make sure that, they were in charge of it the entire time. So I was very proud. I cheered. I yelled. I was so happy. But that's what one should do. So go check if you have things in storage that someone's actually checking on them to make sure they're still there. We've had that happen. We've seen those cases. You go to check and somebody broke into it months ago. Nobody knows when. But yes, we'll move along now.
Yep.
Away from Georgia, at least for a little while.
Yeah. Now we're going to jump over to the federal level. Here's a department we probably never talked about. The Department of Labor.
I know, but it got my attention.
Yeah, because the Department of Labor has doled out some cybersecurity guidance.
Mm-hmm. For plan sponsors, plan fiduciaries, record keepers, and plan participants of the Employee Benefit Security Administration under the DOL. Mm-hmm. It's the first time they ever issued cybersecurity guidance.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're issuing it, and we can't get people to do something that's been around for, 16 years?
Mm-hmm. There's some things about government and cybersecurity that people don't realize.
Here we go.
So first of all, my thing, looking at this, I'm like, fantastic. The other side of my brain is going, you're just now coming out with this stuff.
Well, and other people are like, I can't believe you're telling us we have to do this.
Yeah, yeah. And all the while, I know of a local government entity, we'll say, that has informed us that they can't do cybersecurity. They can't even do the basic cybersecurity because their IT budget for 2022 is being cut by 85%. They already didn't have enough to do even the minimum.
Yeah, it didn't meet these requirements.
No, which it's scary because I'm not going to say who it is, but the government office has a lot of very valuable information, and the state apparently is not going to fund the ability for them to protect that, which is very scary because as Donna mentioned when we talked about this, I wonder how long that's going to take before they get hacked. Probably not long.
No.
But anyway, so just because you see something like a government agency or entity, local or otherwise, just because you see them make the news for something like this, don't say, well, if they can't protect it, how can I do it? Because there's a good possibility they're not doing as much as you think they are.
Yeah. So if it's private business, it's on you for you to make these decisions and be prepared. So we will just say, all we can do is inform. That is it.
Yeah.
My job is to inform you of your business decisions and make recommendations about what I think you should know when you make those business decisions.
Yes.
So here's some information.
Yeah. So I like the fact that the Department of Labor gives us 3 different forms of guidance, which is good. So they're breaking it down a little bit for you. I also like that the very first form they give you is, guess what? Vetting your vendors.
Yeah. Basically, it's called Tips for Hiring a Service Provider, which is much nicer than vet those vendors. Make sure they're doing it, which is what we do.
Yeah. And then the other 2, cybersecurity program best practices, which indicates you should have a cybersecurity program. And then online security tips. So let's take a look at these individually.
Yes.
All right. So tips for hiring a service provider with strong cybersecurity practices is the title.
Note to self, strong cybersecurity practices.
Yeah.
Not just hiring a service provider, but you want to hire one that has strong cybersecurity practices. Now, we've talked about this in previous episodes multiple times. I like what this, how it laid it out. Big fan. So it helps that it's not just us saying it. Again, other people.
Yeah, and we often get questioned when we say something like, you should have strong cybersecurity practice. And somebody goes, what does that mean? Or you should have a formal cybersecurity program. What does that mean?
So, but to be clear, ERISA, which is, there are some security things that do apply, but this particular office within DOL that these things apply to has never released specific guidance on cybersecurity. You know, well, it really got bad about 2016. Summer of 2016 is when I saw everything really start to change. 2017 is when it exploded.
Went off the rails.
Yeah. 2018, end of 2018, 2019, it started going a little haywire and leveling out as they figured out the next phase and switched to these ransomware as a service operations, which have been operational since mid 2019. So there's your references to, I mean, to me, since 2017, everybody should have been starting to look at these, and by now you must do them. Okay, so question number 1, David. If I'm going to hire David's company, SecurityFirstIT.com, I'm going to ask the service provider about your information security standards, practices, and policies, as well as the audit results, and I'm going to compare them to industry standards adopted by other, in this case, financial institutions. And it says, look for service providers that follow a recognized standard for information security and use an outside third-party auditor to review and validate cybersecurity.
We can have a whole episode on that one sentence.
Yep.
Because there are people out there, we shall not name, that will help you create your recognized standard of information security They will help you with your quote unquote HIPAA program. They will give you a certificate seal to put on your website, and they will audit you too as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which means it's not an outside third party audit because they're doing all the work and then auditing themselves.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, do you have this? Yes. Do you have this?
It's not really an audit. It's more of it's kind of like the application that you do when you're doing for applying for insurance.
Check the box.
It's like, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? I mean, nobody's actually coming in and really looking to see if I'm being honest. It's just check it and we'll go from there.
Well, I think we're starting to see the change. I saw an article, and I even sent over to our friends at Sterling Seacrest Partners to ask, and they said, yes, indeed, cybersecurity requirements for coverage are changing and rapidly because of the number of claims. They're going to get more and more strict. In fact, you know people that have been turned down
recently
for cybersecurity code. Yeah.
Medical offices.
Yeah. That should tell you something, folks.
Yeah. Well, I was glad that they got turned down because they should. They didn't have a program in place. And they were honest on the application, so kudos to them. But I was concerned that this particular company that was underwriting the cybersecurity insurance only asked 5 questions.
So they asked 5 questions, and that was enough to turn them down.
That was the only 5 questions. Because I asked the agent, I was like, is there not more to this? No, not with this provider. There's only 5 questions. And I was like, okay, but if something happens, are they going to cover it? I mean, where's the fine print that you don't see?
Yeah, there's all that.
Yeah, but anyway, it would be one of those things I think that would be like, yeah, we'll investigate it. And, you're kind of left on your own to figure out what they do with it. It was kind of, I was worried about it. I was like, you should be asking a lot more than 5 questions. But anyway, that's different topic.
Different rabbit hole.
Yes. Very different.
All right. So, David, what information security standards, practices, policies, and audits and all of that do you do?
I use best practices in the industry.
That is not an acceptable answer.
But that's what everybody says, right?
I know. We're just sharing with you.
We use industry best practices. What does that mean?
Microsoft best practices.
Yeah, I use the David Sims best practices method.
There you go.
But no, you should follow NIST cybersecurity framework, 405D HICP, SIS 20. I mean, there's plenty of frameworks out there. Follow one.
You could use 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Our clients would be able to say we follow HIPAA standards and include portions of the NIST cybersecurity framework and the 405D HICP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Instead of the canned, we follow industry best practices.
Yeah. So if you ask either one of us, that's what we would be able to say.
Yes.
Right, David?
Yes, ma'am.
As the service, this one's particularly good in reference to the previous note. Ask the service provider how it validates its practices and what levels of security standards it has met and implemented. Look for contract provisions that give you the right to review audit results demonstrating compliance with the standard.
That's confidential information, ma'am.
Yep. Heard that one before. What about if they say they're SOC 2 compliant, David?
That has nothing to do with this.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Well, think about that. Not just that, but any kind of compliance. Some of them have what's called a scope. Actually, probably all of them have a scope. And that scope may not include what you're asking about. For example, we'll take PCI for just an easy one. So payment card industry, you're taking payments. You can say, this one terminal in my business is the only terminal that has card holder information in it, and therefore it is the only computer that falls under the scope of PCI and has to follow PCI standards. Mm-hmm. So if you say, are you PCI compliant? They could say yes, but it doesn't mean they don't have a mess everywhere else except for that one computer.
It's beautiful and shiny. And then there's right behind you is a door you should not open because stuff will come falling out like the teenager's closet.
Yeah. So don't fall for that kind of stuff because you got scope, but you also have the fact that a lot of these things are very, very moment in time things. Even an assessment.
Yeah.
If I do an assessment for you, it's a moment in time snapshot of how things are at that moment. It's like going to the doctor. You go to the doctor, my blood pressure's great, and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean I'm good to go for another whatever. I could go out tomorrow and, start having health issues.
Yeah, it's just like when you take your car to the mechanic and you say it's making this ba-da-dum-bum-bum sound.
It never does it.
And it doesn't do it there. And then you get 10 miles away and ba-da-dum-bum-bum. So, yes, it's a point in time. And I will say, if somebody tells you that they're high trust certified, they're SOC certified, they're any of those things, you want to see the definition of the scope of the certification and a report of findings from their audit.
Yeah. And
That's it.
And if they email it to you unencrypted, that's a warning sign. Just saying.
So if they tell you that, ask. Or if they say, we're HIPAA certified, run like the wind. Unless
but
they could be
HIPAA certified, as we covered earlier in the episode.
Yeah. But you can be certified, but you got to know what's the certification body? How does that certification work? What's the scope? Because all of those things should be in there. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a good one. Evaluate the service provider's track record in the industry, including public information regarding information security incidents, other litigation, and legal proceedings related to vendors' services.
I have to laugh because I had somebody tell me a couple days ago they wanted to install an app that was coming from their EHR vendor. And they said, we trusted it's coming from our EHR vendor, very large national vendor. And I'm like, hold on a minute. I could send you several articles about some very, very scary things that happened to them in the past few years. Just because they're a big organization and a lot of people use them in healthcare doesn't mean they don't have a track record of some mess.
Yeah. Multiples. So, yes, you want to know and you want to ask, have you experienced past security breaches? What happened and how did you respond?
That's confidential information, Donna.
I know. But clearly, you just send this to them now. Find out if the service provider has any insurance policies that would cover losses caused by cybersecurity and identity theft breaches, including breaches caused by internal threats such as misconduct by the service provider's own employees or contractors, and breaches caused by external threats such as third-party hijacking a plan participant's account. Yes. We often say this. Make sure they have coverage. But what you want to make sure of is you got a small provider that has 20 clients and they all have the same requirement for insurance coverage. And they got 1 million, 2 million policies, something like that, or 2, 3, 20 clients. That's going to be a feeding frenzy after that money. Number 6. When you contract with a service provider, make sure the contract requires ongoing compliance with cybersecurity and information security standards, and beware contract provisions that limit the service provider's responsibility for IT security breaches.
Yeah. So this speaks to the moment in time problem.
Yep.
Right. Make sure that it requires ongoing compliance with cybersecurity.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I was going to sign up for one of those document signing tools. And when I'm vetting, I go through it. And let's just say there were some things in there where basically it said, we're not responsible for anything that happens. Period. Anything that happens in or out. Anything.
Yeah.
I clarified some things, and they're like, yes, our attorneys think that this is, but bye. Canceled my thing. I'm out. So, but that was only because I took the time to read everything in detail.
Yeah. But how many times have you heard people go, but I know a bunch of medical officers that use this.
Uh-huh.
It has to be okay. They wouldn't be using it.
They didn't read it.
Yeah. I call it the flypaper effect.
Flypaper effect.
Yeah. You know, you hang up the flypaper and you get all these flies stuck all over it. I'm sure some fly said, it's got to be safe. Look at all the flies that are there.
Okay. Moving on. They recommend that your contracts try to include terms in the contract that would enhance cybersecurity protection, such as information security reporting, where you have to get an audit, that they have an audit done and that you get to see it. Clear provisions on the use and sharing of information and confidentiality. Okay. In our world, these are things that go in the BAA, right? So we would have that. Notification of cybersecurity breaches in a BAA. Compliance with records, retention, destruction, privacy, and information security laws in the BAA. Insurance, which, by the by, we recommend that you put in the BAA. So, all of that sounds familiar, does it not?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like.
It reminds me of a comment we made before that at some point it's going to be HIPAA for everyone. And indeed, it looks like it's coming.
Yeah, there you go. So all of those things sound exactly like what we recommend. And here it is, published by the DOL. And we did not volunteer to work on this document.
No, I'm not volunteering anymore.
No.
I'm full.
No. So there you go on what the recommendations are for hiring a service provider.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing too, is you've got to dedicate some type of resource to doing this too. This is, not easy work. It's time consuming. You got to know what you're looking for. So, I mean, I can see some people going, oh my gosh, I can't go through this every time we need to hire somebody, but you should.
Yeah. Well, it's like I explained, we're getting calls, as you can imagine, from people in other industries now.
Mm-hmm.
And had a conversation with the CFO of a company, irrelevant what it is that they do, but he's like, I don't have people to do these things. I don't understand. I'm like, okay, you do have people doing things today to manage your bank accounts and all these other things. That's what you do. You implement this with it and train people to do it. It's not a full-time job once it's implemented, but it is a full-time job to get it implemented.
Sure enough.
Yeah. Okay, so that is a perfect segue to the cybersecurity program best practices document they provided us.
Yeah. And just so you know, I didn't see any checklists.
Not a single one provided.
Not a single checklist.
None.
But they do give us 12 things to look at. So
interesting. 12 things.
So if you want to, you can start and do this alongside your 12 days of Christmas. On the first day of Christmas, it says a formal, well-documented cybersecurity program. Wow.
Yep. Plans that service providers should have a formal, well-documented cybersecurity program.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to the guy, well, when you have a formal program, you do this. And he goes, what's a formal program?
Well,
one where you can prove it.
Right. That's what it all boils down to. But, these things aren't secrets. When we say a formal, well-documented cybersecurity program, there's ways to do that. And this document pulls some of this information together. It uses some verbiage that we see around HIPAA, such as, protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, of information. And then it goes on to pull some information out of NIST Cybersecurity Framework, which is you should be able to protect things and do stuff like enabling the organization to, here's a cybersecurity framework, identify, detect, respond, recover.
IPDR.
Yep. They also add disclose the event as appropriate and then restore normal operations, which I still think is kind of recover. But anyway.
Yeah.
I
think
they
respond.
wanted. Yeah, it's all of that. So they kind of threw that out there as kind of secondary, but that's part of your response and recovery piece.
But all of those should be there.
Mm-hmm.
So they say that is part of the formal program, should include those things. And that's like, establish strong security policies, procedures, guidelines, and standards that meet the following criteria.
Yeah, they even give you the criteria to meet.
Yeah, these will sound familiar. Approval by senior leadership. Review at least annually with updates as needed. Terms are effectively explained to users. Review by an independent third-party auditor who confirms compliance. And documentation of the particular frameworks used to assess the security of the systems and practices.
And I don't know about you, but I'm starting to see some business opportunities for auditing.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of third-party auditor stuff brought up in these things. Basically, have somebody else looking at your stuff, which, we do that really on the IT side and the cybersecurity side. That's what our firm does for our clients. We're looking at your stuff to make sure things are getting done and your program is in place. And then in turn, we have to have people look at our stuff.
Somebody's always got to look at somebody's stuff.
Yep. It's been an age-old problem.
Yes. But they go to the trouble under the item number 1 of a formal, well-documented cybersecurity program. They even point out that a prudently designed program, does the infrastructure and everything, but it has a list that says formal and effective policies and procedures govern all the following. And there's 18 items, David.
Yeah, that gives me at least 18 policies and procedures that I should have.
Data, governance, and classification. We call that your policies and procedures on policies and procedures. Access controls and identity management. Business continuity and disaster recovery. Configuration management, asset management, risk management, data disposal, incident response, systems operation, vulnerability. Wait a minute. I just feel like I'm reading HIPAA.
Sounds very familiar.
System application and network security and monitoring, system application development and performance, physical security and environmental controls, data privacy. Just want to make sure everybody notices. Vendor third-party service provider management, a BA management program. Wait. Consistent use of multi-factor authentication, cybersecurity awareness training.
That is right.
And encryption to protect all sensitive information transmitted and at rest. Okay. That's it. They're basically saying, HIPAA for everybody.
HIPAA for everybody.
That's our help me with error thing.
I do love that it's 18.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite interesting. But those are the things that should be in your policies and procedures.
Yeah. Okay. So of our 12, that's number 1. But it's very much like any other program. The first couple of steps is a lot of work, which, by the way, number 2, I love they started out with prudent. Not just an annual risk assessment, but a prudent annual risk assessment, as we will start calling a PARA. I guess. But the thing about risk assessments, sometimes I don't like when they use the term annual risk assessment because
not either.
It sounds like you just do it once a year and you throw it in a drawer.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like that they said it that way, because you and I both know, even they contradicted it in here when they start talking about it, because they're like, yeah, do an annual risk assessment or when something changes, which again makes it not an annual risk assessment at that point. But it does cover a lot of the same things, like identifying, access and document how cybersecurity risks and threats are evaluated, looking at criteria of how to evaluate the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Sounds HIPAA. Describe how your program is going to mitigate risk. Ooh, what is that? A risk management plan. Facilitate revision controls. So, in other words, you want to make sure you keep all your documents, right? Got to see what you were doing.
And changes in technology and emerging threats. So what you want to do is make sure that if there is a major change, you are revising your controls.
Yeah. What are your new risks? Because things have changed.
And I think that also applies to the fact that a risk analysis under HIPAA should be done whenever there's a significant business change.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway.
Yes. And keep current on things that changes in information systems, non-public information, and business operations.
Mm-hmm.
So know where your stuff's hanging out. I get paid to tell you your zipper's down.
You're flying low. You're flying low. So that's number 2. Do a risk assessment, and it follows the exact same rules that we tell you it needs to follow as far as what we do under HIPAA. Ours includes doing number 2 along with number 3, a reliable annual third-party audit of security controls.
And again, the use of adjectives here, I like.
Reliable?
Not just an annual third-party audit, but a reliable annual third-party audit. I just got a kick out of that.
Yeah, it should provide a clear, unbiased report of existing risk, vulnerabilities, and weaknesses. So where do we think that you are stuff hanging out? And here's the thing. This gets down to when we do our report and people are like, what in the... Okay, this is why. As part of an effective audit program, they would expect to see audit reports, audit files, penetration test reports, and supporting documents, and any other analysis or review of the party's cybersecurity practices by a third party. Audits and audit reports prepared and conducted in accordance with appropriate standards, and documented corrections of any weaknesses identified in the independent third party analyses. Yeah. Now you know.
All right. Number 4, clearly define and assign information security roles and responsibilities. In HIPAA, we call this a privacy and security officer, a compliance officer, or whatever. Yes. They do mention things like, CISO and stuff like that. Number 5, strong access.
One thing that's important, I don't want you to miss here.
Okay.
That it says that the qualified person that has sufficient experience and necessary certifications, then regular updates and training to address current cybersecurity risk and current knowledge of changing cybersecurity threats and countermeasures. Just want to point that out, that they need to be a qualified individual with ongoing training.
So it would be somebody that would probably have to go to the HIPAA boot camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
It certainly wouldn't be somebody that had the HIPAA 101 training that the rest of the company had and they're in charge of it.
It's just a 30-minute video, Donna. 30-minute video.
Yes, and now I'm in charge of the entire company's privacy and security program, and that's what I've learned. Too many times we see that. Okay, So back to your strong access control procedures.
It just reminds me of this doctor who said, we live in this HIPAA world. And I'm like, didn't you just tell me 5 minutes ago you had a data breach that you didn't know you had to report? Okay. Just pointing that out there, Doc.
They think they live. You don't know what you don't know. Yes.
Strong access control procedures.
Yeah.
That would
These
be-
are all the things we're used to seeing.
Yeah, just, making sure that you know has access to your stuff. And it should only be people that need to have access to stuff. And, using
And
proper
you're watching.
passwords. Yeah.
You're watching. Where it says policies, procedures, and controls are implemented to monitor the activity of authorized users and detect unauthorized access, use of, or tampering with non-public information.
And how are you going to do that unless somebody's watching?
That's right. You got to be monitoring your logs.
Starting to sound like you have to have a managed service provider to do this stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Number 6. Are you ready?
You go.
Assets or data stored in a cloud or managed by a third-party service provider are subject to appropriate security reviews and independent security assessments. Now, this one here trips up a lot of people because they'll say, but I'm using Amazon Web Services, or I'm using Microsoft or Google, and they're not going to answer my risk assessment questions.
Yes.
What do you
That's
say?
done. If you talk to, Capital Data that had their breach on Amazon is used to having to deal with people misconfiguring things and having data breaches. It's not like they never happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do them properly. And that's why they include in here your best practices when evaluating these things require a risk assessment of the providers. We evaluate where are the risks, defining minimum cybersecurity practices for the providers, and periodically assessing service providers based on potential risk. When we go in and everybody says, and I know you've heard this too, our EHR is in the cloud. We don't have to worry about HIPAA.
Mm-hmm. Wrong.
Wrong. Totally wrong. So that you can't just do that. You can't, the wrong is the answer. The put it in the cloud and you never have to worry about it is incorrect. Put it in the cloud and it's less cumbersome to worry about for small providers is, I think, a more fair statement of what they should be seeing it as.
Mm-hmm.
You concur?
I do concur. I would also say that, again, you need to assess that because there's things called private clouds.
Yes.
Private clouds tend to be in data centers that could be smaller, maybe even local. And sometimes you don't realize what the provider of that local data center can and cannot do when you have something happen.
Yes, it's late in the game for this, but boy, do I have a story on that. I'm going to try to get a client to come on and talk about that story. It was so interesting that a car accident could shut down something far away for 2 days. I'm just saying. But anyway, let's go on. We're running out of time, but the rest of them are things that we've covered a million times, except for number 8. So number 7, cybersecurity awareness training conducted at least annually and updated to reflect risk identified by the most recent risk assessment.
And it does say for all personnel.
Yes, everyone, everybody. Be on the lookout for individuals falsely posing as authorized plan officials, fiduciaries, participants, or beneficiaries in emails and all those kind of things. But here's the thing, is it's updated to reflect risk identified by the most recent risk assessment. if I don't have any additional training of my own besides that 30-minute video, then how can it have the things I identified in my own risk assessment? I'm just saying.
Which also points to the fact that your security awareness training probably should be changing every year if it's being updated by the most risk assessment.
Well, you augment it. I mean, certain things don't have to change, but you need to have things that are augmented. You need to have training for your policies and procedures. You don't just have them read it. Okay. I've read plenty of policies and procedures. I couldn't tell you what's in them. Like as soon as I sign them and go to the next page. But anyway, number 8, very important. And they bring it up because many people develop in-house applications and they don't think about this. Please, please, please. If you're developing your own in-house applications using any tools, even scripting in Excel and macros or whatever, you need to evaluate that you have a secure system development lifecycle program, or SDLC. And if you're a software company, you better be nailing that stuff down with the new secure software development framework that NIST has put out, or some other things along that line.
Yeah. Now, if you want to replace this, let's say you don't do software development and all that, I would say that you could replace this with just some type of asset lifecycle program.
Or make sure that things, when you say asset, don't leave out software asset.
Right. Yep.
Not just hardware asset.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, because that's what gets people in trouble often, is that people are installing software all the time. The software gets forgotten about. Maybe somebody installs a trial of something or whatever, and it never gets patched. And then there's vulnerabilities. It becomes a hole. You remember when they had the big issues with, what was it, WinZip or something a few years ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and all these people were using these old versions of that because they installed it at some point. They weren't using it anymore. They never removed it. And now you've got this vulnerability sitting there on your machine that you don't even know about.
Yep, nobody's paying attention.
Right. Which
then, perfect segue into number 9. If the vulnerability's sitting there you don't know about, it could cause you to need number 9.
A business resiliency program.
We're a big fan of that because now David can say,
burp.
But I like the term because it encompasses everything: business continuity, disaster recovery, and incident response, all under one roof, because we've started doing that years ago to treat them all as one piece because they do intertwine and, run the gamut of all the things that you have to do. But we all know, we've talked about these a million times, but it does tell you about an effective program, what it should include. And, a key element is its documentation and reporting requirements. Clearly define and describe the roles, responsibility, and authority levels of people that are on the team. Oh, I mean, it just really sounds like what goes in our HIPAA boot camp session, David. Sounds just like it.
Maybe we should change the name of it. The burp boot camp.
The burp count. Okay. It's going to be the burp session in the next boot camp.
There we go.
The boot camp burp. There you go. All right.
And then we could call the incident response plan the ERP.
The ERP of the burp. Okay, clearly we need to be done.
We're off the rails. All right. Number 10, encryption, data at rest and in transit.
Yep.
We talk about that a lot. Number 11, technical controls. Strong. Got to throw the adjective in there. Strong technical controls. Implementing best security practices.
Yes.
Yep. That's when we were talking about hardware, software, firmware.
Patch management, segmentation.
Hardening of systems.
Backup and recovery. Yes.
Yeah,
remember you're buying recovery.
I like the fact that it said preferably automated.
Yes.
You'd be surprised how many people still doing their own thing. Let's swap out tapes every day or swap out USB drives or whatever. We got this. We're handling it. So
Yeah.
I still
I
see
loved
it.
it when I saw somebody take a USB drive off of the main one server, took the backup USB drive, disconnected it, walked over across the room to a filing cabinet, opened a drawer, put that one in, got another one out, walked back across the room, put it in. It's like that's your backup.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, so
and number 12 on this list, responsiveness to cybersecurity incidents or breaches.
yes. And that means knowing what the law says, working with law enforcement, notifying people, having a plan to actually investigate, and honoring any contractual or legal obligations with respect to the breach, including complying with agreed upon notification requirements.
And,
So
and
there
the
you
last
have it.
part of step 12, fix the problems that caused the breach in the first place.
To prevent reoccurrence.
It's almost like this should go without saying.
But let's put it in there. How many times we have those discussions on the
Yeah.
405D? People know that. Near. We need to put that in there.
Did you fix the problem? Well, no, we didn't fix it, but we identified it. And then the last sheet, online security tips, is a quick little 2-pager, but it talks about, I thought this was interesting. The first one is register, set up, and routinely monitor your online accounts. It's basically saying that even if you're not using the online account, register it anyway so that somebody else can't.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Use strong and unique passwords, use a password manager, use MFA, keep your information current, close or delete unused accounts. Be
It's called
wary.
spring cleaning.
Yeah, I know. Be wary of free Wi-Fi, which they didn't mention anything about the use of VPNs, which I thought was interesting.
Well, be wary of free Wi-Fi. Hopefully that'll take you down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I would also say be wary of free VPN.
Indeed. Everybody like, oh, we good.
Yeah,
No, you're
free?
not.
Why we got to pay $2 a month for it? Or got it free? No, everything that's free is going to cost you. It might cost you more than you want. Beware of phishing attacks. Use antivirus software and keep it up to date. And then know how to report identity theft and cybersecurity incidents. I would also say know how to identify identity theft and cybersecurity incidents and report it.
Yes.
And that is our list of stuff from the DOL.
Yeah, so the DOL done drop some cybersecurity things that sound remarkably like all the things that we recommend doing under HIPAA, HICP, and NIST cybersecurity framework.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it starts with vetting your vendors and then having that program in place, cybersecurity program.
Yeah.
And it spells it out in pretty good detail. So I'm a fan. I like it. So-
Now we can just wait for people to say, I'm not doing that.
Maybe so.
Yeah. Somebody
anyway.
needs to do something to stop this. We just told you what to do. You don't
Yeah.
like what we told you.
Cybersecurity has a U in it.
All right, we're done.
You can't do cybersecurity without you.
We're
Oh,
going to have
boy.
to use that one
I know.
with
All
an
right,
Uncle
folks.
Sam.
Yeah. Cybersecurity. All right. Thanks, folks, for listening. We enjoyed you enjoying us as usual. Remember, for Donna and myself, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.